Good things always come in three, except for the Boston Bruins. The 2015 NHL Draft will always be remembered as the Connor McDavid Draft. He stands as one of the most dominant and talented players we've ever seen play. And not only did McDavid go first, but this draft was filled with talent and was known as an insanely deep draft. Heading into it, there was a feeling that this would be the draft class that defined the decade. Much how like Sidney Crosby was the face of hockey throughout the 2000s, the 2015 draft had players that could define the sport throughout the 2010s and beyond. And so far, it's been true. This draft already has multiple superstars and top-end talent, and none of those players were drafted by the Boston Bruins. In a remarkable turn of events, the Boston Bruins found themselves in possession of 3 consecutive first-round picks during the 2015 NHL Draft, a rarity in the league's history. This came on the heels of a disappointing 2014-2015 season, where despite accumulating a respectable 96 points, the team missed the playoffs for the first time in 7 consecutive seasons. The aftermath saw a significant shakeup in management, as GM Peter Chiarelli was fired in April of 2015 after serving 9 seasons in Boston. Stepping up into the GM position was assistant manager Don Sweeney, who assumed the reins of the leadership and has been managing the Bruins ever since. So, because the Bruins missed the playoffs, they were handed the 14th overall pick in the draft, but the Bruins wanted more. One notable move involved the departure of long-standing Bruin and fan favorite Milan Lucic. He was traded to the LA Kings in exchange for Martin Jones, Colin Miller, and the Kings' first-round pick, which ultimately landed the Bruins the 13th overall pick. Another significant transaction saw restricted free agent Dougie Hamilton being dealt to the Calgary Flames, giving the Bruins the Flames' first-round pick along with 2 second-round picks, and that first-round pick ended up being the 15th overall. So the draft started, and of course McDavid was selected 1 and Eichel was selected number 2. The picks after those 2 did not come as a surprise, and a lot of them have turned into NHL beasts, until it was the Bruins' time to draft. The Bruins got to the podium and announced their first of 3 selections in a row.
Jacob Zabarwal from the St. John Sea Dogs.
Now, at the time, this wasn't a crazy off-the-board pick. Zaboral had draft rankings from 12th overall all the way up to 26th overall. So, like I said, it wasn't completely off the board, but still came as a little bit of a surprise. In his draft year, Zaboral managed to score 33 points, ranking 3rd in defensive scoring for his team. Notably, the defensive scoring leaderboard was dominated by another 2015 draft-eligible prospect, Thomas Chabot, who was chosen just 5 picks later in the draft at 18th overall. After his draft year, Zaboral played 2 more years with the Sea Dogs, tallying 61 points in 100 games, while also playing some games for the Czechia U20 team. In 2017, he finally got his chance at professional hockey, where he played 68 games for the Providence Bruins, posting just 19 points. Since then, he really hasn't made an impact at any level of play. In 76 NHL games, he has just 16 points. And Boston actually placed Zaboral on waivers on December 13th, 2023, and apparently this decision was Jakob's, as he wanted to see if any other NHL team would give him the chance. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and he cleared waivers, but was eventually traded at the trade deadline along with a 2027 third-round pick to Columbus for defenseman Andrew Peeke. So with Zaboral's contract ending this upcoming summer, it may be safe to say that his career could be over in the NHL. The Bruins had high hopes of securing a strong puck-moving defenseman, but instead they ended up with a player who struggled to make a significant impact, even at the AHL level. After drafting Jakub Zaboral, the Bruins returned to the stage to announce the second of their 3 picks, and they selected the goal-scoring winger from the WHL, Jake DeBrusk.
Jake DeBrusk.
This is easily their best pick of the 3 because DeBrusk is the only one still playing in the NHL, and the only player even in the Bruins organization for that matter. Now in hindsight, the Bruins would have selected a completely different player, but DeBrusk is in no way a bad NHL player. But when it comes to the 2015 draft, DeBrusk was definitely an off-the-board pick. The highest he was projected was 19th overall, and the lowest was at 28th overall, with many other projections falling in the mid to high 20 range. In his draft year, DeBrusk scored 42 goals and 81 points in just 72 games, and his 42 goals ranked 7th in WHL scoring and ranked just 2nd in 18-year-old goal scoring in the league. Although DeBrusk has established himself as a decent NHL forward, there was a lot of amazing talent that was left on the board, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Through DeBrusk's 450 NHL games, he has scored 134 goals and 239 points, all with the Bruins. He's had back-to-back 25-goal seasons while playing on the second line, and he's been okay in the playoffs with the opportunities he was given. So the question rises, was Jake DeBrusk a good selection at number 14, and what was said to be a decade-defining draft? Definitely not, but it could have been much worse, like who they selected at number 15. The Bruins return to the podium yet again, this time making an even more shocking selection.
Zachary Senyshyn from the Sioux Greyhounds.
The Bruins drafted Zach Senyshyn, and if you've never heard of him, I don't exactly blame you.
Well, this is right off the board.
Yeah,
Sammy.
this one goes off the board here.
He's played just 16 games at the NHL level, registering 3 points, and has never made an impact on an NHL team. And this obviously wasn't the plan for Senyshyn and the Bruins. The Bruins drafted him to hopefully utilize him as a skilled offensive winger to play in their top 6, but obviously this isn't what happened. Going into the draft, Senyshyn was coming off a 45-point season with the Greyhounds of the OHL. In the OHL, this production isn't the greatest for a first-round pick, which is why Senyshyn was projected in the mid to late second round. That's right, Boston took this kid a full round before he was supposed to go, and it unfolded just how you would have thought. As I said before, Senyshyn has just 3 points through his NHL career, which lasted just 16 games spanning over 4 seasons. He was then traded at the 2022 NHL trade deadline with a 2022 5th-round pick to Ottawa for Josh Brown and a 7th-round pick in 2022. After just 1 season with Ottawa's AHL team, he decided to head to Europe and test his luck there. In July of 2023, he signed a contract with the Schwenninger Wild Wings of the German DEL League. This decision seems to be better for Senyshyn as he played 51 out of the 52 games and scored 31 points. This is really the only pick where the Bruins went completely off the board. Drafting Senyshyn almost a full round before he was projected to go proved to be a poor decision by the Bruins management. So looking back, yeah, the Bruins definitely screwed up what could have been such a pivotal moment for their franchise. Between their 3 first-round picks, only 1 remains with the Bruins organization, and he's actually the only one still playing in the National Hockey League. And everyone knows that drafting players is super hard. Aside from the top-end talent in the draft, it's very hard to determine how an 18-year-old will develop over the course of his 20-year career. And even at times, that top-end, sure to make an impact player doesn't pan out, which is why you can let some teams off easy for taking a player around where they were projected just for them to bust and never develop. But this isn't the case for the Bruins. They took 3 players off the board, leaving an insane amount of talent undrafted. So let's get into what could have been. I'm just going to list the players that were still available after the Bruins finished their 3 consecutive picks. Matt Barzal, Kyle Connor, Thomas Chabot, Joel Eriksson-Ek, Brock Besser, and Travis Konechny. And that's just in the first round of that draft. So not only did they go essentially 0 for 3 in this draft, they missed out on some top-of-the-line talent. I mean, Barzal won the Calder Trophy his rookie year, Kyle Connor is an established 30-goal scorer, Chabot is Ottawa's #1 superstar defenseman, and Brock Besser is on pace for a point-per-game 40-goal season. This being one of the deepest drafts in recent NHL history, it's pretty hard to believe just how big the Bruins missed. Say the Bruins stuck with drafting 2 forwards and a defenseman. Here's a look at how the Bruins could have looked if they selected Barzal, Connor, and Chabot. Yeah, it's pretty unreal. You can't help but think that with the addition of Barzal, Connor, and Chabot, that the 2019 Stanley Cup final, which the Bruins lost in 7 games, could have gone much differently. But that leads me to this. The Bruins, despite not winning a cup since the draft, have been one of the most successful regular season teams. They made the playoffs every year except for the year right after the draft, and they've won 2 President's Trophies, with one of those coming with the best regular season record in NHL history. So the Bruins have done fairly well on their own, even with those failed draft selections in 2015. But you have to think that in those years that they've been so dominant, they would have gone one step forward and won a Stanley Cup or two with the addition of 2 top-end forwards and a superstar defenseman. So maybe the best things don't come in 3, at least for the Bruins.